used to be a political consultant, and he travels to really weird places too. Really.
Barbara said that she started, was it 1980? I started teaching in San Bernardino Valley College at the ripe old age of 23 in 1964. So this is my 55th year of looking at the economy of these two counties of the Inland Empire. And so, to some extent, what I'm doing, talking or thinking about is stuff I've lived through, not just studied numbers about. As was said, I also, at one point for 10 years, professionally ran political campaigns. So I elected city councilman, one of our DAs, one of the members of the Board of Supervisors. I elected 5 people into the California State Assembly. So for 10 years, I basically never slept. And I was a crazy person. I had to end that because my current wife, who was my 4th, we just celebrated our 29th anniversary, so. But Deborah said, if you don't get out of politics, we don't have a chance of even having a long conversation again. Now, based upon my experience sort of living, and most of that time, I lived in San Bernardino. So I watched San Bernardino die. And I understand and have studied and talked about, well, dealt with issues to try and fix it, and was completely unsuccessful because the political dynamic never worked, and frankly in that town today still doesn't work. If you go back before San Bernardino, the other place that had the same set of problems was Pomona, and Pomona died and has never really come back. So my fear for the Victor Valley is what occurs here is precisely what occurred in Pomona and later occurred in San Bernardino, and right now is also occurring out in the Hemet San Jacinto area of Riverside County. Now the dynamic in every case was the same. It starts out with a boom in housing, a crash, and all of a sudden, a significant share of the housing stock becomes detached single-family rentals. I've done a lot of research on the effect of that, and one of the studies was done up here, which was to track calls for police service by type of residence, and by far calls for police service from detached single-family dwellings, not apartment houses, was the #1 place that you got calls for police service. So once that begins to happen, what you end up with is a very large number of people living in the community who are renters with no particular stake in it. They aren't homeowners who, as part of being homeowners, are developing their houses and become a serious part of the thinking of a community because they have a huge financial stake. And that happened to Pomona, it happened to San Bernardino, it has happened to you up here. And then I said it's happened to Hemet San Jacinto. So when Joe said to me, would you take a look at this for me, my first reaction was enormous skepticism. Because one of the things that I have learned over these years is if you ask political leaders to take on these issues, they can't. They can't do it. It is beyond their ability. The governments are too underfunded, and they have too many interests in things like re-election. So if you depend on that to be the source of change, forget it. It's not going to happen. And so that is a really important starting point for my remarks, that if you're going to do it, where's it going to come from? Educators. It's going to come from developers with a stake in the success of the community, for real estate firms, the service clubs, the business owners, the chambers of commerce, those kinds of groups who traditionally don't play that kind of a role of leadership in trying to change the dynamic of a community. That's why it fails, because you're relying on people who are elected and quite frankly can't, just because of the nature of who they are and what they do. Now, the process I'm going to go through, first of all, is I have to look at the data. So I look at a whole set of data on this region. I've done it for pieces of it, but not for the region as a whole. So what I'm going to want to know, to some extent I'll get from Barbara, what the surveys are saying, people are saying and thinking, but what the data is telling me. So I'll be looking at issues like demographics. How fast is the population growing, slowing down, all the rest of that. Age levels, the income distribution, the ethnicity of the community, adult educational levels, which are crucial to trying to get the economy to shift. Then moving over to things like quality of life. How well are the schools performing? What's the crime rate, the welfare rate, the availability of technical and higher education courses, calls for police service by types of homes. I want to look at that again. Then there's a whole employment. The problem that will jump out of the employment data, I already know. Most of the employment in the valley is population-serving employment. Population-serving employment generally pays $30,000 and below, not above. And that is a disproportionately large part of your economy, because the basic firms which bring money into a community aren't really located up here, with a very few exceptions, and most of you know them. You have, like, for instance, the bottling company. You have what's going on with some of the companies out at the former air base. And I have the data already to look at what sectors have done what over the last 20 years, what in terms of job creation, in terms of payroll, and average pay per sector, and I can track that over a period of time, which is fascinating, because it also shows me, to a large extent, what are the competitive advantage up here that need to be stressed. Then there's housing, existing home sales, new home sales, existing home prices, new home prices. But most importantly, what share of the housing stock is in the hands of absentee owners, people who are renting them. There's a lot of money to be made selling houses to absentee landlords. Well, one of the things you have to do, quite frankly, is stop it. Because if that goes on, you are basically participating in destroying your community. And I know there's money to be made there. That's one of those places you need to keep your hands out of the till. Then taxable sales by city, as well as assessed valuation. Because one of the things that those data show is that over time, if you adjust what's happened, though the levels are starting to get back to the 07 levels, not if you adjust for price increases. So the purchasing power of the cities to be able to do anything for the citizenry has in fact gone down. And then there are the key assets here. Victor Valley College, Southern California Logistics Airport, the mineral deposits, which have given you some incredibly well-paying companies up here. The potential alternate routes to get down the 15 freeway. I always find coming up here on the 15 freeway is a little bit like being in a NASCAR race. You've got BNSF and UP railroads, and one of your key, absolute important groups is the Mojave Air Quality Management District, which is not the Southern California Air Quality Management District. thank God, because the level of anger that businesses have, justifiable with the Southern California AQFD, really is one of the major deterrents to job growth down the hill. Then out of this, I think we're going to see, again, I'll be looking at what Barbara generates with these issues. The significant share of rental single-family homes. Are there, and I worked a lot on this issue. I know that strategies can be used for it. I know how hard it is to implement it. I know that no city up here has really tried and probably never will. I only know one city that's done it successfully, and it was small enough to be able to pull it off. But it is trench warfare. The city of Moreno Valley is still battling this same issue because it ran into this problem back in the 1980s. It is tough. Then there's the industrial market. The good news for you is data that I track for the logistics and distribution and manufacturing sector shows that in the valleys, they're running out of land that is industrially zoned or in agriculture, but largely likely to become industrially zoned. It's almost gone. Almost all of what remains is about 2,600 acres on the eastern side of the city of Moreno Valley, together with what's up here and what's out in the low desert in the North Palm Springs area, that part on the I-10 freeway. So that means that the logistics sector is finally going to have to go the next step. They're now in Beaumont. If you'd have said to anybody in that field, are you going to build a major facility in Beaumont to serve Southern California, every single executive in logistics would say you're out of your mind. Well, you have a 750,000 square foot facility from Amazon that is broken ground in Beaumont. So they're moving out. There's not a lot left in the Bass area. So they're going to jump and go into Desert Hot Springs as well as North Palm Springs or come up here. Now the disadvantage to here obviously is the 15 freeway and 3,000 feet, which is what you've got to haul stuff up to get up that pass, and that is expensive. However, will they come? When they have no choice, they will seriously look at the area and talk about coming. And they're getting close to having no choice, which is a piece of the good news. So you're having to look at things like differential labor rates, less expensive land, those sorts of issues that can be used, plus, quite frankly, the Mojave Metropolitan District, or the Air Quality Management District, because frankly, AQMD is putting in place rules that may start to shut down the logistics sector in the valleys. They've got some crazy stuff that they're proposing right now. Imagine, for instance, if you're running Amazon and AQMD comes in October and says you have a maximum number of trucks that can come to your facility, you're closed till next year. That is the absurdity of some of the thinking that you're getting down in the valleys, which may also encourage moving up here. Another thing you have is that I will be looking at is the job base, which is, as I indicated, primarily population-serving jobs. Now, there are some sectors like that you'd like to see grow because they generate more sales taxes to the point that we can identify places where there are still stores that need to be migrated up here. I remember when I was first working on this, you had almost no car dealerships here. All the car dealerships were down the hill. Well, they're up here now, so that's not the place, but there will be some of that. But the an economic strategy This was introduction to the drama of getting companies up here. You have competitive advantages. The number one competitive advantage is a labor force that doesn't want to commute. I mean, anybody that voluntarily wants to commute up and down that freeway, really you need to open a mental institution up here. Now, you then have the problem of a weak resources for city governments. And there's not a lot you can do about that other than to try and increase retail sales. Part of the problem is with e-commerce doing what it's doing. E-commerce is starting to shut down regular retail operations, brick and mortar. So that is an issue. And if you open up a large facility for e-commerce, the formulas for what sales tax generation that does for the local community, I can sit here and talk for 3 hours trying to explain it, and neither you nor I would understand it. But it's a really complex formula, and very little of what goes on in one of those large e-commerce facilities changes the retail sales of the place that it has it. It has an effect, but not very much. Now, then you've got a major problem here, which is the low educational levels of the population. Population incomes and population adult educational attainment are like that. And when you put those together, you have difficulties, and so you need strategies to try and make sure that the children don't follow in the footsteps of their parents, but also trying to raise the educational profile of the parents. Remember, we've got technology coming at us at a blistering speed, which for people that are not well educated is going to really harm their ability to continue working. And so both four-year educations, community college educations, technical training skills, either in the community colleges or in the 6th through 12th grades, are going to be key parts of any such strategy. As I work through this, one of the things that I'm going to be finding is, and outlining, is, all right, how do you do this? What's necessary? But the key ingredient when it's all done is going to be leadership. Now let me give you 2 examples. Number 1, Boston, Massachusetts. Most of the direct flights for business executives in Boston were going out of New York, New Jersey. Boston's business community decided that's not sufficient. So they organized themselves, went to Logan Airport, and said, we need to change this. And so the business community, pushing on the airport, put together the data on their own employees, sat down with the airport, worked on the marketing programs to the airlines. They went on the meetings with the airlines and changed that dynamic, which was of major importance to Boston. The second example is just finished in the Inland Empire. And maybe some of you were involved in this, but Brookings was hired through the 2 counties and largely through the efforts of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership, engaged in a 1.5-year process of identifying what are the next sectors of the Inland Empire economy that we should be concentrating on. And this was a huge number of focus groups. It was essentially designed to get people to understand the depths of the problems, to talk about how they could participate in fixing them. The result of that was a paper. The paper outlined 4 strategies, and now what's being organized is implementation. Because, like Joe said, I'm 78 years old. I am tired of doing studies. Implementation is everything. So the reason my work will take 6 months is not the data. It is not the identifying of the issues. It is working with Joe and some of the kinds of people in this room to go through the process here in the high desert that we went for the full 2-county area in conjunction with Brookings. I was a major part of that whole effort, so I pretty much know how it was done. And so that will be crucial, because out of that, we should end up with strategy, but hopefully buy-in from the people who need to lead it. And I will again underscore, they aren't elected officials, it is you. Thank you very much.
Dr.